Hello, good people of YouTube. It is me, Neil, back once again with fiefdom Tracklocross to ruin your lovingly curated YouTube algorithm. Going to carry on today with looking at the philosophy of Tracklocross, and today we're going to have a little bit of a look at the ethics of slowness. The modern world is addicted to speed. From productivity metrics to Strava leaderboards, speed is fetishized as an index of success, mastery and worth. Technological acceleration, turbo-capitalism and digital surveillance collectively reinforce a regime in which slow is synonymous with failure, obsolescence or at best quaint nostalgia. Yet a countercurrent flows beneath this hegemonic narrative, the ethics of slowness. This ethical orientation does not merely advocate for leisure or delay, but reconsiders what it means to move, to act, to be in the world. Within the cycling world, perhaps, nowhere is this revaluation of speed more intriguingly manifest than an obscure, slightly absurd and quietly radical practice of tracklocross. Tracklocross at first glance appears as an aberration, a hybrid cycling pursuit that marries fixed-gear track bikes with off-road mud-slicked chaos of cyclocross. It is as if someone brought a scalpel to a battlefield. The result is a deliberately awkward, effort-intensive and technically demanding activity where riders forgo gears, brakes and suspension to test their mettle against natural terrain. To the uninitiated, this seems like a joke or perhaps an act of masochism. But closer scrutiny reveals that tracklocross is a deeply philosophical act, a micro-resistance to the dogmas of performance, speed and linear improvement that pervade both mainstream sport and modern life. Today we will see that tracklocross embodies what we will call the ethics of slowness, an ethos rooted not in sloth or regression but in a principled embrace of inefficiency, absurdity and friction as ways of making space for autonomy, locality and playful defiance. To begin, we must consider slowness itself, not merely as a tempo or mode of action, but as an ethical concept. Slowness has historically been coded negatively in Western modernity as weakness, backwardness or failure. From the Industrial Revolution to Silicon Valley, the preferred tempo has always been acceleration, faster machines, quicker decisions, shorter attention spans. The slow movement, initiated in the late 20th century, as a response to the harms of globalization and hyper-productivity, offers a counterpoint. The slow food movement challenged the dominance of fast food by promoting regional cuisines, sustainable farming and unhurried dining. This ethos quickly proliferated into slow cities, slow travel and even slow thinking. Slowness, reinterpreted here, is not a lack but resistance, a refusal to obey the market's demand for haste. The ethics of slowness then is not about inefficiency per se, it is about autonomy, situatedness and deliberate presence. It is about resisting instrumental rationality and embracing the messy, improvised and local. These values are strikingly present in tracklocross, which is a sport that on the face of it makes no sense. Tracklocross is a portmanteau of track bikes and cyclocross. The fixed gear simplicity and rigidity render it uniquely unsuited to such conditions. Unlike cyclocross or mountain bikes, tracklocross setups lack the practical tools, brakes, wide gearing or even suspension to manage rough terrain. What results is a physically and technically demanding ride where riders must use their entire body to navigate terrain. Skidding to slow down, dismounting to run up muddy slopes, lifting their bikes over logs. Efficiency is not the point, suffering for some is. Why pursue such a self-imposed handicap? The answer lies in the realm of deliberate dysfunction. Like riding a single-speed bike in the Alps or taking your skateboard for a wee grind down a handrail, tracklocross subverts the teleology of progress. In a world where bicycles have become marvels of engineering with their carbon frames, electronic shifting, disc brakes, tracklocross strips it right back. This is not a regression for nostalgia's sake, it is an aesthetic and ethical decision to refuse optimization. It is, in a very literal way, a slowing down. The ride takes longer, the climb may require dismounting, The descent without brakes becomes a negotiation with the terrain. Each obstacle becomes an occasion for a choice rather than a reaction. Slowness emerges not only in speed but in rhythm, attention and experience. The ethics of slowness is also an ethics of situatedness. Tracklocross riders must attune themselves to the grain of the land. Without gears or suspension to buffer the terrain, the rider feels every bump, root and rut. Success is not achieved by conquering nature but by collaborating with it, reading the trail, learning its tendencies, developing intimate local knowledge. This stands in contrast to the colonial ethos of modern sports technologies, which often seek to dominate or simply flatten the environment. Gravel bikes with their wide-ranging drivetrains, dropper posts and GPS-enabled mapping systems enable a form of global riding that renders local specificity irrelevant. Tracklocross, by contrast, privileges the here and now. It demands local trails, local fixes and improvisation. It refuses abstraction in favour of the specific. There is a kind of humility in the slowness of tracklocross. The rider cannot rely on power alone. They must be tacticians, dancers and cartographers. They must dismount, carry or even yield. The body becomes an interpreter rather than a conqueror. This humility, born of limitation, has ethical implications. It echoes what eco-philosopher Val Plumwood describes as an ethics of mutuality, not mastering nature but learning to live within its demands. Such slowness is a rebuke to the high modernist dream of seamless speed. It is not about going slow for its own sake, but about restoring a balance between self and world, means and ends, effort and result. Tracklocross also resists the capitalist colonialisation of time. In a culture where even leisure is monetised through Strava segments, comms or gravel race entry fees, Tracklocross offers an uncommodified playfulness. There are few sanctions events, no governing body and little in the way of formal recognition. A typical tracklocross race might be 3 fens, setting up cones in a field or a collective hill climb on a muddy bridleway. This lack of structure is not a deficit, it is a political choice. Slowness here means freedom from metrification. Times are not logged, ranks are not formalised, you finish when you finish. Or you don't. The point is not to be the fastest, but to be there, together, struggling and laughing in the mud. The act of doing something, not for instrumental gain, but for shared experience. This resonates with the idea of action as plurality. The act of doing something not for instrumental gain, but for shared expression. In this light, the ethics of slowness and tracklocross is also an ethics of conviviality, doing something difficult together for its own sake. Okay folks, that's the end of the first bit of the ethics of slowness. There will be a wee second part on this. As usual, if you liked it, like, subscribe, all that jazz. But remember, I'm not your mum, so you don't have to. Do whatever you want. And as always, go out and be the best person you can be today. Thanks for watching, listening. Cheers.